phone.
गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गणेश शॉर्ट. गणेश शॉर्ट में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we're going to discuss something very interesting, and that is social disorder in China. I will say, look, यार ये तो बहुत दिन से we have been listening about this social disorder for a long time, and कुछ होता नहीं है वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. I agree with you. वैसा कुछ होता नहीं है चाइना के अंदर. But you know, I saw this article. Very interesting. You know, and it just caught my eye. A simple, stupid thing, the way I look at it, and what's so great about it? Chinese cartoon campaign warns village clans against hindering Communist Party. यार ये है क्या ये चीज? I mean, this something. For me, it was this thing. Then I read through the article, and then voila, the impact of this was huge. So, let me take you through step by step and make you understand where I'm getting at. We all think that China is a monolithic country where the Communist Party, gumaus a danda and everyone jumps. It's not so. A lot of protests, a lot of issues, a lot of ethnicities, diverse. Forget about the Tibetans and forget about others. Within. Then villages have clans. If you go back into the history of China, they kept fighting within each other. Right? Dynasties kept fighting. Dynasties kept falling and rising. Different dynasties. Kabhi Manchus, kabhi Hans, kabhi kuch. We'll not go there. But we'll discuss this. So this is a cartoon which came out officially by the Communist Party of China, warning village clans not to stop development. So this is how it goes. This is the cartoon. For me, I could make a damn about it. हमारे लिए तो भाई दो बंदे बैठे हैं बीच में, flanked by two more chaps in white, and they're just standing around and all. But when you read the thing, it is striking. What does it say? A cartoon circulating on official Chinese websites and social media accounts is intended as a cautionary tale against confronting the Communist Party and government. This is fantastic. And look, I am not, for one moment, I am not saying anything which is my own head. I am just reproducing what's come out in the South China Morning Post. And they are saying that the Communist Party has put out this cartoon to tell the village clans and caution them against confronting the Communist Party. So what does this tell you? It tells you that the Communist Party is being confronted. And who's confronting them? The village clans. Have you heard of the village clans so far? No. That means something is happening. I mean, just understand there is something happening there which we have not caught on. Okay? This is the full cartoon. This is the full cartoon which came out. I can't make a sausage out of it, but this is what it is. He says a comic strip issued by Beijing. So, Beijing has issued this comic strip. It's a cautionary tale about a family elder demanding that a relative block the constructions of a telecommunications tower. It's a story. Okay, it's a story in a way. It says, don't block government efforts. Where the village elder is telling the his relative, don't put up the tower. And the relative is, a Communist Party chap and all that. So this is something weird. Who tells stories in cartoons? Just think. When your communication does not go through well, you start cartooning because cartoons express more. You know, what does the government do normally? अगर कुछ village में कुछ problem है, तो you go and tell that village में, ओए इधर ऐसे होना चाहिए, नहीं होना चाहिए, ये वो सब कुछ, बस बात खत्म. और अगर वो मानता नहीं है, तो डीसी को बुलाते हो, ये करते हो, वो करते हो. और वो फिर भी नहीं मानता, तो गांव बूढ़ास और नंबरदार सबको बुला के सबको बताते हैं. What do you do if they don't all listen? Probably you have to go through this cartoons. And so now, are we looking at a stage where these village clans are not listening to the Communist Party? Or are they getting into their own mold? What does this article say? It says this. The article goes on to say that the tower was demolished by the villagers. So it's somewhere it must have happened that the Communist Party and the government was putting up a tower and the villagers broke it and causing more than $28,000 damage. And the village official was expelled from the party. So there must have been a chap in the village who's part of the party who's been expelled. Now, this is all in that cartoon. Why is this? In recent years, a number of people had with bad intentions have organized themselves and used the solidarity and cooperation within clans to confront the party and the government. So, what is interesting? The interesting thing is that people are organizing themselves within to confront the government. And it is not one clan, it is clans. He's talking of clans. So there is something. The next sentence is more interesting. The government post last week said that the clans had formed a state within a state, which has had extremely bad social effects. It called on party members and cadres to consciously resist such behavior. So the party has been energized. कि भाई ये जितने clans हैं उनको बंद करो. Have we heard of this before? हमारे देश में तो हो जाता है काप्स इन हरियाणा और विलेज एल्डर समवेयर एल्स वो झंडा खड़ा कर देते हैं. But as a democracy, here, if the village clans that are confronting the government, there is something serious. I mean, that's the way I look at it. If that has come, that means there's an organization against the government which is Upanaprai. It's something germinating. Okay. I mean, now let's link this up. This phenomenon, this is a social phenomenon. We keep talking of social disorder in China. This is a social phenomenon, and let's link it up with the other protests. After all, a lot of protests have taken place. If you go back into the history of China, the last violent protests actually happened in 2008, 2009, just before Beijing Olympics, when Tibetans were brought under control, firing took place, people were killed, there was immolation, everything. And all the Western society, and including India, looked the other way. We let them down. After that, the Tibetan movement just collapsed. After that, there was hardly any protests. Local protests hote rehte hain. But you come 2 years back, you had this protest in Henan when people were protesting for the money because the banks collapsed. I spoke about it. And a good 30 odd cities were affected by these protests where people came in front of banks and said, please give our money back. And it was to the extent at that time, the PLA put up tanks also. They said, if it goes violent, we might have to use tanks. This photograph came out then. And then, of course, there was this Bridgeman, 20 Party Congress, 2022, October 22. In the 20 Party Congress, he put this against. उसके बाद उसको लापता है. Now, then the pensioners also went into a protest because there were cuts in health benefits. These are all things which happened. And then this white paper protest, which brought the COVID down 2 years back to December 22. But these protests were slightly different. These were spontaneous. The people came out. Like in the bank protests, people, for their money, they came out. And people realized that their money was at stake, they all came out and stood. When people, there was this fire in Xinjiang, Kashgar, I think. So, in a hotel where people died, 10, 12 people died, and then the thing came out and against COVID. This was, again, it was an eruption. That was an eruption. All these were eruptions. That Bridgeman was one lone solitary chap who put it up. But this movement is different. Village clans organizing themselves and resisting the government, resisting the Communist Party. And the Communist Party is going to come down. I don't know whether the Communist Party will be able to push down or not. But think back, about a year back, we were all saying, look, if the things goes bad, there'll be social eruptions. Is this the first of the social eruption? That is what we have to examine. The fact is, this has happened. This comic strip has come out, and it has come out in South China Morning Post. It is there in Weibo. It is there in their social media. You cannot ignore it. The fact is that the Communist Party is against the village clans. And if they are against the village clans are organizing in some form. We don't know. But what we need to know and look at ahead is, how serious will this be? Why has it happened? That is what I want to try and put across. I mean, the way I look at it, you need to look at the मरीज तो आपके सामने आके खड़ा हो गया, इसका सिम्टम्स तो देखो, आगे क्या करेगा? Let's see what's going to happen after all this nonsense. There's also this Tangping movement. Tangping went to Bailan. All this happened together during COVID time. Tangping means relax. Bailan means let it rot. We spoke about it. They were against that 996, 9 to 9, 6 days a week. That work culture, people were against it, are still against it. And this is now Economist. It's come out. Why? Protests are soaring as China's workers demand their wages. Because a lot of places wages are not being paid. Or they're not paying enough. The backlogs, everything. So people are protesting. Don't forget that there were protests in that Apple factory. That factory had to close, violence, all that, because of inhuman conditions. So that also happened. So if you string all these together, they are of one genre. But this is different. So let me analyze that. I need to analyze that. Why is that happened? Why is for the first time, there's no party, there's no opposition, nothing. But for the first time, the village clans standing up or uh, against the government. There is some organized method or organized thing coming up against the Communist Party and its government. Will it will it be reversed? Will it be forced? What is it? What are the chances? Why is it happened? These are the questions, right? Let's now do some serious thinking. Okay, what is the social contract between the Chinese people and the Communist Party? The social contract always has been you give me your freedom and I'll give you prosperity. Period. Now, Xi Jinping changed that equation. We all know that. What did Xi Jinping do? Because as things went down, common prosperity, uh, their GDP started stalling, the economic progress started stalling, COVID came, all that. It turned from freedom to security. So you give me your freedom and I'll give you security. That's the new equation. Now, this thing of security came up in the 20th Party Congress in 22. Kept getting repeated. Now, in the third plenum last month, July 15, when it was held, the third plenum communique talks more of security than common prosperity. So, where does it leave you? So, the new compact is freedom. You give me your freedom and I'll give you your security. Look, there's no contract in black and white that you give me your freedom and I'll give you prosperity. But that is a general social contract, social understanding. And that has changed. To me, it appears that the Chinese people are not accepting it. The Chinese people don't buy this business of freedom. Why? They're getting poorer. Their needs are not being met. They're losing faith in the government to give them that prosperity. They, in fact, probably are convinced that the prosperity won't come. Well, you might say this is all conjecture. I agree with you. I agree with you. I have no doubt about it. Then you might say, China is a tough state, Communist Party will clamp down on everything. Maybe. Maybe. But if they do that, that means a lot of unrest. You can put a balloon in one direction, press a balloon in one direction, it will burst in the other direction. In my view, China, and they'll slowly sliding into that state. Slowly, it will take time. It will take time. Let me be honest. It's not going to happen tomorrow, day after, or the day after that. It will take maybe a year. It may be 2 years. It may be 3 years. When the property bubble started, right, and I'm going to get back to that property because that property thing is important in this whole story. When the property thing started, people never believed me. People, when I said there's a bubble and it's going to go slow and it's a slow collapse of China, people laughed at me. Well, keep laughing, but China is slowly collapsing. I have no problem with that. Right? So let's see the triggers for all this story. What are the, look, yeah, okay. If you look at the Chinese thing, you find, I put this model, in the core is the leadership, demography, PLA, global tensions, and the economy. These are the 5 things which plague China today. Big problem with China are these 5. If you can understand these 5 big problems, the rest fall in place. Leadership, we know there is no great leadership now, except Xi Jinping ji. And that fellow, we know for the past 6 weeks, he's been missing. He's suddenly come out in the past 2 days and kuch baat kiya isne. He met a couple of leaders who were visiting, the Vietnamese leader and the the Fijian leader. He's met. He's interacted with the athletes, and that video about his interacting with the athletes has gone viral because he's not spoken anything. It's only music and sound. He is giving some anodyne statements, and there are. If you go on Twitter, you'll see people saying that he's had a operation and things like that. Whether it's a fake or not, we don't know. But we know that he's not on the handle. And there's no second rank leadership. And their leadership has been purged heavily. You look at the demography, you look at the PLA, you look at the global tensions that they're facing, and you look at their economy. We'll talk of the economy in great detail because look, if you are a common man, you're not bothered about the rest of the things. You're more bothered about aapka roti, kapda or makan. Are you getting it or not? So let's look at the major outlines of this story. What about the economy? What about that economy? Which are the issues which are plaguing China? Headlines: property, overcapacity, drop in exports, factories are getting closed, there's joblessness, infrastructure is too much, useless infrastructure. And all this is dragging the economy down. Look at the demography. People, they get aging, no marriages, childbirth is declining, there's declining workforce. Now, this business of demography is haunting China already. It has not yet taken root. 2 years back, when I started talking of demography, people said, "नहीं बगराव यार, तू ऐसे बात करता रहता है, मूंछ वाला आदमी आके." Now today, people in China are writing about it. But people say, no, no, we have robots, we'll automate, we'll produce and all that. But China doesn't have to produce, they have to consume. Robots don't consume. When I said this earlier, people laughed at me. A lot of comments came, people said, yeah, you don't know what you're talking. But today, China is worried about demography. Why? I'm sure this business of economy and demography is finding resonance in the villages where everyone is old. Then the PLA. What about the PLA? This great PLA, which is to give security to this nation. It's under purges. Top leadership has gone. Every day, top leadership changes. There's corruption. Either there is corruption or there is too much politicization. One of the two. That's why the purges are taking place. And there's lack of experience. They never fought. So every time they're going to have new leaders with no experience and an inexperienced dummy and all that. You look at South China Sea, they're slowly being drawn. I read this 2 days back, 3 days back in the update. Where will they go? Actually, China is almost at war with Philippines. It started with militia. From militia, Coast Guard has started being deployed about 500-600 kilometers away from their mainland, or maybe even more. Then after that, slowly the Navy started getting deployed. The Air Force has now got into the act. Then there's some news which I don't know whether it's fake or not, that those islands which they put are probably sinking also. So they're stretched. Then you look at the global tensions. US-China equations are in bad shape. All their neighbors are against them. There's a trust deficit. The BRI is going nowhere. This is the macro picture of China which we have to understand. If we don't understand this macro picture, the micro picture of what that village, why that village clan has stood up, or the clans have stood up, we'll never understand. Because at the village level, they're not interested in how China is dealing with Taiwan and all that. उसको क्या लेने देना हुबे में जो बैठा है एक village में. But whatever they've done is serious enough that the Communist Party has to put out these cartoons. That's the point I'm making. Will they be able to get over it? Yeah, by force they will. Danda laga ke marenge sabko. But what will happen? What about their economy? Because everything depends on their economy. Will that economy revive? No, that's the question which has been grappling, because the rest of the factors in this on the right, demography, PLA, and global tensions, still don't affect that village clan. Except he has to give people for the PLA, which he doesn't have to give, because all the villages are now held by old people. The young people have all gone to the cities. So it's the economy. Go back in the history of China. Mao got the villages with him. He formed his rebellion from the villages and attacked the cities. Today, the Communist Party is losing the villages. Will it regain it? Maybe by danda, not willingly. Why? Okay, for this, what I did was I took analysis of 3 articles. They gave talk differently. And from that, you'll understand the prevalent mood in China. I mean, the sentiment in China. I'm not talking of army, navy, air force. उनके पास उतना aircraft carrier है, उसके पास nuclear है. ये नहीं बात कर रहा हूँ मैं आज. I am talking of how people are getting affected. That's my thrust line. What are the politics of China which we have to understand? Because the peace, internal peace to a large extent, depends on the politics and the people. What's that story? Now let's see what is the first article. Today it might be a little long, but I want to get it out of my head. The first article in Foreign Affairs. The article is about stopping the next China shock. The author has written a lot, but certain things which the author has written stuck in my mind. Look, we all know that consumption by Chinese is the answer for reviving their economy. But what this chap says is shifting a substantial portion of the country's wealth into the hands of the ordinary citizens would empower them at the CCP's expense. So the CCP will never keep their people happy or wealth. After all, when Xi Jinping, when he took over and he brought back state control, he curbed all the wealthy people, Jack Ma and gang. So he's not going to put wealth in the hands of anyone. So if he doesn't put wealth in the hands of anyone, they'll always be against him. So that's the first part. Now, redirecting resources towards consumption and services, as developed countries eventually do, could diminish China's industrial prowess and relative power. Why? Because the moment you go in for consumption, your service sector has to shoot up. And that will be at the cost of your industrial sector. That's the cycle, global economic cycle, which means that joblessness will start setting in China. The real estate bubble has burst. The burst of the real estate bubble has contributed to a dramatic post-pandemic slump in consumer demand and economic confidence in China. This is a Western author. We'll talk of a Chinese author also who talks, because that chap has, deliberated upon it in detail. I'll speak about it today only, so that you get the idea of what's happening in China. Xi's government has settled on a more investment in manufacturing and another big export push, with particular emphasis on high-tech sectors. So we know that this is a Geet from China, high-tech, new quality productive forces, technology, manufacturing, overcapacity, all that. Okay, so what else do this chap says? Okay, what he says is these economic policies are principally about power, not prosperity. So let's be very clear. The Communist Party of China is not interested in prosperity. They want to retain power first and then prosperity. Beijing pursues a growth target model that relies on exports of manufactured goods, investment in infrastructure, and real estate to drive economic growth and absorb China's colossal national saving. This is important. So you're looking at export, infrastructure, and real estate. All these are now in a problem. Okay, today, EU has put 36% tariffs on Chinese vehicles, EVs. So, exports are going to get hit. Investments in infrastructure are not paying back. Real estate has gone down. But on the other hand, there's a truism that when the going was good, the Chinese people, saved colossally. The Chinese people by nature don't spend, unlike us. We are a consuming economy. They are not a consuming economy. They have very high savings. And where do they save the money? In real estate. And that's gone down. So the savings are gone. So they are poorer. Z and CCP are not primarily concerned with the pursuit of efficiency or national welfare. He's not interested in welfare. Their economic policies are designed to preserve the CCP's dominance and control. So the whole story from the CCP perspective is dominance and control. During the time of Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin and even Deng Xiaoping, the idea was it doesn't matter what the color of the cat is as far as it catches mice. So भाई आप पैसा बनाओ. वो तो खत्म हो गया. पैसा ही नहीं खत्म हुआ. People are now going back. They don't have money because what the money they have, they didn't consume. Their only mode of consumption was real estate. End of story. So further it says household consumption. The problem of household consumption, look at this. 37% in China and 68% in United States. In our case, it's somewhere in the region of 40, around 50% consumption. Now, Michael Pettis, who I think is the best economist who talks of China, he says that China has to shift 10 to 15% of its GDP and put it into households. How? That's a different question. They have to transfer it to households. So, in the form of higher wages, improved healthcare, and retirement pensions. Against which there are already strikes. Healthcare, same. After all, it is pensioners' healthcare which led to those strikes. Higher wages, no, they're going down. That's what the next chap is saying. So, neither wages are going up, nor there are pensions. The pension is about to be bursted by another few years. And retirement pension and healthcare is not good. So why will there not be unhappiness in the people? And if there is unhappiness in the people and they have no method of organizing themselves into a political party, how will that expression come out? They will come out in their traditional methods. And the traditional methods, I suspect, are the village clans. Will it go further? We'll see. I don't know. These are dots. There's a trajectory forming. We have to grasp that trajectory. The next article, again in Foreign Affairs, it says, look, these articles which I'm showing are not data driven. These are analytical articles. And I'm only showing you those which I find are coldly analytical. Because Foreign Affairs, if you read it blindly, there's a lot of information warfare going on. Right? It's an influential magazine. But my way of looking at it is I see the analytical part, take it out and give it to you. And use for us. I mean, right? That's the way I've seen it. Now, what he says, this article says, China is producing far more output than it or foreign markets can substantially absorb. Foreign markets are not going to absorb it, nor can the Chinese absorb it. So where is their production going to go? Chinese economy is in a loop of falling prices, insolvency, factory closures, and ultimately job losses. It's happening. Shrinking profits further increase profits. Why? It's very simple. Sorry, output. If my profit is shrinking and the margins are getting low, I'll produce more to make it good. And then I'll discount those prices. That's what he says. It's heavily discounted goods to generate cash to service debt because everything is on debt. I run my factory on debt. I have to repay that chap. If I have to repay that chap, I have to produce and sell. If I cannot sell, I'll produce even more and go for volumes. And to achieve volumes, I discount prices so that I get enough money to square off. But the moment I produce more, I need more raw material. So I need more debt. It's a negative cycle. And it is happening. And factories are being forced to close. Why? There's too much competition. The amount of competition in EVs has meant that 30 to 40% of their smaller factories, EV manufacturers, are gone. Finished. They might be at the national level, they might be great. All EVs here in India, USA, and all might be Chinese EVs or batteries. There'll be 4 or 5 companies which you have cornered the market. But does that mean the average China man is happy and he doesn't has enough food to eat? That is the question. Okay. There's another thing. Party sees consumption as an individualistic distraction. They're not interested in consumption. The party wants the Chinese people to consume what they produce. But मेरे को चाहिए rice. तुम produce करते हो wheat. You both say I have to eat wheat. But for wheat, you say industrial goods. For rice, you say I want perfumes, I want jeans, A, B, C, whatever it is. I'm not getting what I want. I'm getting what the government is giving me. This is something like the Soviet model. Go back into Soviet Russia. People got what the government produced. And where did it go? I'm asking you this question because I don't have any answers. I can only analyze. Okay, let's continue this analysis. China's economic advantage is low consumption, high saving rates, generate capital, state-controlled banking, which funnels money into the industrial enterprise. So this is interesting. This loop is interesting. I earn, I don't spend, I save. I put it in a bank. So that bank gives money to industry, and that industry produces more. Cycle. So who's losing at the end of the day? The common man. I mean, this is something we have to understand. And that is why, and where is it getting reflected? Where is this problem getting reflected? Village clans. I think so. We'll have to see. I'm not saying that it's the start of a Bhookamp out there. We'll have to see how this whole story moves forward. Pointers. Okay. Then China ensures political stability by embedding CCP into every economic sector. So the entire economy is controlled by CCP members. And China's leadership can restrict finance at any time as per the interests of the party. So the whole thing is being controlled. I mean, the last line is important. In the West, money influences politics. Like the military-industrial complex of USA influences the politics of USA. But in China, it is opposite. Politics influence money. If you are in the CCP, then you know how to control the money. But is that the efficient way to go? That is obviously empowering those or making the CCP chaps rich and the guys at the bottom poor. That's the thing. So there's a lot of overcapacity, which ends up in brutal price wars. It hampers profits, divorce capital. I've said this is a fact. 27% of Chinese automobile manufacturers were unprofitable last year, in May last year. Today, the unprofitability is 32%. It has increased in 1 year. Overproduction has also depressed prices, causing inflation to hover near zero. The whole story is deflation. There is deflation. I've been talking of deflation for the past 3 months. It's happening. It's slowly happening. Like the property bubble has burst and slowly it is deflating and it will not go out. This will also happen. Eroded consumer confidence, decline in domestic consumption, and increasing the risk of China sliding into deflationary trap. This is being very nice, but I feel that it's already in a deflationary trap. See, this is the important thing. As per Chinese planners, consumption relates to industrial priorities, automobiles, electronics, digital products, and smart appliances. So the Chinese want the CCP wants their people to consume these things. So the domestic market is shaped by states' industrial policies rather than by individual preferences. I might not like any of these. I can't buy land there. What? So where do I go? So is there a case for the people to get upset about what's happening in China? There is a big case. Are they upset? I'm sure they're upset. Will they come out? Is there a method to come out? There is no method to come out because the political parties are banned, political systems are banned. So how will it come out? Village clans is one way of resisting the government and the whole thing. In India, though, it's okay. Every fifth year, you'll throw the government out. This is a very interesting article. This is by Economist. This is the inside story of China, what he's going to tell. What does he say? He says China's real estate was the focus of investment for all of society. We know that. Middle class families kept purchasing. This pushed property prices to a new high in a very short time period around 2017. This is not a new story. This is now festering for 7 years. And this came up then. Now that abhi kahani nikal ke aa raha hai. A sign a bubble was about to burst. In 2017, they knew. And they kept a lid on it. So when people like me spoke about it 2 years back, people said I'm a fool. They knew internally. Similarly, there's a problem internal, they know now. There's a problem which we don't know. It will burst one day. I have no doubt about it. Now, look at this. Evergrande started to offer 20% discounts as a selling strategy as early as 2016. How many of us knew what Evergrande was in 2020 also? I started to hear about Evergrande in somewhere around 21 or 20. For 20 May, ekad article, 21 May, a lot of articles. By 22, 23, it's gone. Now 23, the whole thing was to be disbanded. But those chaps knew from 2016 that there's a problem in property. And this is a fact of life as per them, as per their published people, and as per their economists. In case you don't know who that economist is, ये देखो, देखते हैं उसका शक्ल अकल, ये है भाई साहब. आप ये लिंक लीजिए, ये हेडलाइन डाल दीजिए. In South China Morning Post, you will get his analysis. It's a very good analysis. I only picked up what I wanted to pick up and tell you. Okay, he says the Chinese real estate industry was in oversupply. Rather than recovery, the real estate sector disappeared as a pillar industry. So China mein real estate was a pillar industry, which is no more. That pillar has broken. And a downward trend of prices led to contraction of household balance sheets. This is not new. It is happening from 2016-17. So where does that leave the armed Chinese? Okay, I'm not talking of BRI. I'm not talking of big things. I'm talking of small things. People matter most in a country. Okay, he says this is the latest. Huh? I mean, if we all think, oh, ठीक है, 2-3 साल में बाहर निकल के आएगा out of the whole story. This is a data as of May 24, 2 months back. Total area of commercial housing for sale, right, was over 743 million square meters. It is an increase of 15.8% over last year. What is this funny thing? On one end, your real estate is collapsing. On the other hand, the total floor space is increasing. And this is 5 million square meters more than 2016. Why? Because they already started those projects, they have to complete it. So they are now being forced to put good money after bad investments. They're not able to cut their losses. So if they're not going to cut their losses, do you think this problem will get away? If this problem doesn't get away, who loses? The people. If the people lose, they'll go against the government. It's a matter of time. China's real estate sector still has a long way to go to reduce its inventory. No bugger talks that it'll take 10 years. Because if a chap talks, Xi Jinping will finish him off. The era of large real estate companies or large construction is over. Now people are talking. So if they don't do infrastructure, they don't do real estate, how will their economy grow? These EVs and all will not allow their economies to grow. Oh, he also says China's household debt is very serious. Okay. The ratio of household debt to GDP was about 18.9% at that time in 2007. Today, 17 years later, it is 69%. Where does it leave that bloody armed Chinese? Household debts, households use debts to buy real estate. So I udhar liya or flat kharida, but prices have fallen by 30% or 40%. It has affected consumption. Naturally, if I have a loan, how can I go and buy a fridge? And it's a big constraint on the economy, it will never recover. The last thing is very important. Real estate asset values have gone down, but mortgage payments remain the same. I have a house, I've taken it on mortgage, I'm repaying the mortgage. In many cases, I don't have the house also, but I have to repay the mortgage. Money which I had gone, I don't have a job and I have to repay the mortgage. That is China today. And it says it will trigger changes psychologically. There's a psychological aspect. You may say the Chinese are not affected psychologically. And this is coming from a Chinese economist. It's not my kalpana, it's not my imagination. Consumers will feel that they have less money and they will need more savings to deal with that risk. So they're going to save more. If they save more, they'll put it in the bank. That bank will go and give loan to someone else. And they'll still go for manufacturing and they'll go for industry and make it useless. So the negative cycle, they'll never come out. And Xi Jinping is not going to let them come out. My only hope is Xi Jinping lives well and gets back into power. Because he'll destroy China beautifully for us. China's economic growth is not mainly dependent on the domestic market. Earlier, the main driving force for growth came from globalization and the international market. Everyone knows that. But now a Chinese is saying this. A Chinese economist is saying this. That's the important part. And they term it as a three-horse carriage. The three main engines of growth being exports, investment, and consumption. Exports are down, investments are useless, consumption is not taking place. This is the problem of China. Okay. Now he talks of household things. China has a tradition of increasing savings, accumulating wealth rather than spending. The average Chinese chap won't spend. Now, current economic downturn has reduced people's incomes. Salary cuts, civil servants, teachers, and employees, public institutions, and employees of public institutions and hospital staff, everyone is getting a salary cut. If he has a salary cut, how will he go and spend? Layoffs in many industries. Job creation has declined. Today, I have not got that thing, but today the amount of what shall I say? Okay, I'll get back. Yeah, unemployed youth have gone up. Last year they stopped producing the results, the data of unemployed youth. Right. This year, based on what they have published last year, unemployment has gone up by 13 to 14%. When they stopped publishing, it was around 25%. When they published, they said no, it's only about 10%. Over and above that, it's now 14 to 15% increased. So overall, if you go by the old figures, their unemployment rate is today probably at about 30%. Educated people. And during COVID, 3 years of COVID, many people couldn't work. So that saving is important for them, and that saving is in bank, and that bank is giving it to infrastructure, making EVs and industry, like I told you, that negative cycle. So if all this is there, why won't village clans organize themselves? I'm not giving a hypothesis that they can organize themselves. I have given you a fact that they have organized themselves, and that they have forced the Chinese government and the Communist Party to put out cartoons and warn them that, look, don't do it. If you do it, I'll kill you or whatever. Now, he talks of the third plenum. He says the third plenum has confirmed that China adheres to a socialist market system, state control. It's gone back to the Russian model. And the third plenum also outlined the national priorities. What are they? Security, ideology, and state-owned economy. So if it's a state-owned economy, you see in the halat, you think they'll recover? I don't think China will recover. And I'll take a bet with anyone for the next 10 years. Let me see if the Chinese economy can recover. They'll grow at 3 to 4%. You'll see. Why? भाई जी जिनपिंग ने हुक्म दे दिया कि ग्रो करना है, ग्रो करेगा वो. They'll poodle fake everything through. But is it real growth? Sorry. And the last thing, in the third plenum, he says, important message, vigorously develop science and technology and emphasize the importance of building a unified national market. That bloody unified national market is what the Soviet system had. You could buy an item in Moscow in a supermarket or go to Perm and buy it on the roadside. It costed the same, unified national market. So this fellow is going back there. So if he goes back there, आखिर क्या होगा? They'll end up like Russians. So look at this article back. Look, this is there. In any case, it also tells their sense of humor or lack of it. Articles circulating on official Chinese websites and social media accounts is intended as a cautionary tale against confronting the Communist Party and the government. This is not my story. This is the Chinese story. I've just presented the fact. I've interpreted the facts the way they are. Overall, if I see, this is the first sign of social unrest. Will that come out? We don't know. We'll never know. If you miss this article, but there's no follow up. That follow up might come in some other form. Let's see. I don't know whether what I've said resonates, but these are the facts. My view, China is getting weaker. I have no doubt about it. I don't think it's a superpower, and no one is listening to it in any case. But for anything, you can't discount China. You have to understand this. There's a momentum on in China. That momentum is a outward momentum and a forward momentum. That momentum has slowed down, but it is still forward. Their foreign policy is still forward. Till that momentum changes, China will be troublesome. But beyond that, even after it changes, China will still be troublesome because till such time the CCP is around. After that, I don't know. Because the history of Chinese, remember, when in 1962, when the PLA attacked us, whether it is in Eastern Ladakh or in Arunachal or in Wolong, China was under the grip of a huge famine, the Great Famine, which was part of Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward. Again, history. So with China, as things go, you have to expect more trouble. Why am I talking? We need to understand this. We need to be looking out for more trouble, and trouble will come. Let's not forget that. उसके साथ साथ ये अपना this बेवकूफ देश called Pakistan will go because they don't have any choice. I'm sure some Pakistani will say China is a superpower. Those 2-3 Pakistanis who come on this channel and talk will talk well about China. Well, all the best to them. Fine. I've said what I've had to say. I'll take your questions on.